happy family sets off for a beautiful island to enjoy their vacation. No idea that this journey is about to become the greatest nightmare of their lives. They become stranded with no obvious way to escape. Just when all hope appears to be fading, they encounter a group of fishermen. However, instead of helping them, the fisherman's greed tears the family apart. The father is separated from his wife and young son. Will he ever reunite with his family, or will this separation last forever? Let's find out in this thrilling survival story. The movie opens early in the morning as Kevin heads to the beach with his wife and young son, hoping to rent a boat for a family adventure. When he arrives at the rental dock, every boat has already been taken. After repeatedly asking for help, one of the workers tells him that a man nearby rents out his private boat. Kevin finds the man, pays the rental fee, and offers to leave his ID as security. Surprisingly, the owner smiles and refuses, saying he completely trusts him. Soon, Kevin and his family sail into the open sea. After traveling a long distance, Kevin's wife begins to feel uneasy. She points out that they have gone much farther than planned and suggests turning back before they get even farther from shore. Kevin agrees, but just then he notices a small island in the distance. His son becomes excited and begs him to visit it. Kevin initially refuses, but after his son's repeated requests, his curiosity gets the better of him. He decides they will make a quick stop before heading back and steers the boat toward the island. When they arrive, they are amazed by the peaceful scenery. The island is beautiful and completely deserted, with no one else in sight. Kevin explores the area with his son while his wife enjoys the quiet surroundings. After looking around, the family spends some relaxing time together, enjoying what seems like the perfect vacation. As the afternoon comes to an end, Kevin decides it's time to leave. He helps his wife and son climb back into the boat, then reaches for the ignition and tries to start the engine. Nothing happens. At first, he assumes it's only a minor problem. He tries again and again, but the engine refuses to start. He checks the fuel tank, which is completely full. He carefully inspects the engine, yet he can't figure out what is wrong. As evening approaches, Kevin becomes increasingly worried. He realizes that spending the night on an isolated island with his family could be extremely risky. With no other choice, they remain on the island overnight. The next morning, Kevin's wife wakes up and finds him still trying to fix the engine. Despite all his efforts, nothing has changed. That's when they realize they left their phones behind. Even worse, the man who rented them the boat never took Kevin's identification, meaning nobody knows where they are. Suddenly, Kevin spots another boat far away. He jumps up, waves his arms, and shouts as loudly as he can, desperately trying to get their attention. Unfortunately, the boat is too far away, and the people on board never notice them before disappearing over the horizon. Kevin tries to stay positive. He tells himself that tourist boats probably pass through this area regularly, so sooner or later someone will find them. But an entire day passes without a single boat. They have very little food and almost no fresh water. 3 difficult days go by, and Kevin's young son begins to grow weak. His wife slowly starts losing hope, fearing that no one is coming to rescue them. Even then, Kevin refuses to give up. Determined to save his family, he decides to move the boat without repairing the engine. After helping his wife and son aboard, he grabs the oars and begins rowing across the sea by hand. He keeps rowing for hours despite being completely exhausted and severely dehydrated. Eventually, his strength gives out, and he collapses inside the boat, losing consciousness beside his family. Another day passes. When Kevin finally wakes up, he realizes that ocean currents have carried their boat to another island. His first instinct is to check on his wife and son. To his immense relief, they are still breathing. Then, in the distance, he notices another boat. Summoning every bit of strength he has left, Kevin calls out for help and waves desperately. But once again, the people aboard are too far away to hear him. He continues shouting until he can no longer stand. Before he can do anything else, exhaustion overwhelms him, and he loses consciousness once again. This time, however, the people on the passing boat finally notice Kevin. The boat belongs to 2 local fishermen. One of them gives Kevin some water while he catches his breath. Kevin explains everything that has happened, telling them how he, his wife, and his son became stranded on the islands. He also mentions that he works as a doctor. The moment one of the fishermen hears that Kevin is a doctor, his attitude changes. He asks Kevin what he will get in return for helping him. Kevin immediately offers to pay him, but the fisherman doesn't seem impressed. Realizing he wants much more, Kevin explains that his entire life savings are all he has, and that he is willing to give every dollar if it means saving his family. Instead, the fisherman demands $100,000. Kevin tells him he doesn't have that kind of money, but the fisherman insists that he can borrow it from friends and relatives. With no other option and desperate to save his family, Kevin reluctantly agrees. Moments later, Kevin suddenly loses consciousness. When he wakes up, his hands are tied died, and his wife and son are nowhere to be found. The fisherman tells Kevin that he intentionally separated him from his family. He claims that if Kevin were reunited with him immediately, he could report everything to the authorities. Until he receives every dollar he demanded, he refuses to reveal which island Kevin's family has been taken to. Since there are countless islands in the area, Kevin would never be able to find the correct one on his own. The fisherman insists that Kevin's wife and son are unharmed and promises they will be released once the payment is complete. With no other choice, Kevin is forced to cooperate. A short time later, the fisherman takes Kevin to a public phone booth so he can contact friends and relatives. Kevin spends hours making desperate phone calls, asking everyone he knows for financial help. Eventually, nearly $1 million is gathered in his account. The fisherman finally agrees to reveal the island's location, but first he demands that all the money be transferred into another bank account instead of his own. Kevin has no choice but to comply. The two of them visit a bank, where Kevin transfers every dollar into the account the fisherman specifies. After the transfer is complete, Kevin immediately asks where his family is. Instead of answering, the fisherman leads him toward another boat. At first, Kevin believes his wife and son must be waiting there. But when they arrive, he realizes something isn't right. The fisherman tells Kevin to climb aboard the second boat. As soon as Kevin steps inside, the fisherman locks the cabin door from the outside. He then tells Kevin to simply follow behind his boat, claiming that he will unlock the door once they reach the island. Kevin calls out from inside the cabin, but the fisherman ignores him. With no other option, Kevin follows behind as both boats head farther out to sea. After they are a long distance from the shore, the fisherman signals Kevin to bring his boat closer. Thinking this is finally the moment he will be reunited with his family, Kevin carefully moves alongside him. Instead, the fisherman ties the two boats together. Then he pulls out a sharp tool and begins damaging Kevin's boat, creating large openings in the hull so it starts taking on water. Kevin shouts from inside the cabin, desperately trying to stop him, but the fisherman refuses to listen. The second fisherman, George, tries to convince him to stop, but his pleas are ignored. Within minutes, the damage becomes severe, and seawater begins pouring into the cabin around Kevin. George can only watch in shock, unable to change what is happening. The two fishermen continue watching from a distance as Kevin's boat slowly disappears beneath the surface. Trapped inside, Kevin manages to survive for a short time by using the small pocket of air still trapped in the cabin. Eventually, the fisherman assumes Kevin is gone and leaves the area. But Kevin is still alive. Using all the strength he has left, he tears a metal lever loose from inside the cabin and repeatedly strikes one of the windows. After several exhausting attempts, a crack finally appears. Hope returns. With one final effort, the glass gives way, allowing Kevin to escape from the sinking boat and reach the open water. By that time, both fishermen are long gone. Not long afterward, a tourist boat spots Kevin in the water and rescues him, bringing him safely back to the mainland. As soon as he arrives, Kevin reports everything to a Coast Guard officer. He explains how his family became stranded, how they were separated, and everything that happened afterward. However, it is already nighttime. The officers tell him that the official search operation will begin in about 3 hours, because the area contains more than 100 islands, making the search extremely difficult. Kevin desperately argues that they don't have that much time. He insists that finding the fisherman should be the top priority, because he is the only person who knows where Kevin's family is. The officer, however, isn't completely convinced by Kevin's story and asks him to wait until morning. That's when Kevin realizes that no one truly understands how urgent the situation is. He knows he can't afford to sit back and wait. At that moment, Kevin makes up his mind. No matter what it takes, he'll find his family himself. Believing that every minute counts, he decides not to rely entirely on the official search. The officers arrange a room where Kevin can spend the night, hoping he can get some rest. But sleep is impossible. His mind keeps racing. After quickly freshening up, Kevin steps onto the balcony, trying to think clearly. Suddenly, he remembers something the fisherman had said, that there were more than 100 islands in the area. That comment gives him an idea. He immediately walks to a nearby cafe, where he finds a detailed map of the region. He carefully studies every island, hoping to figure out where his family might have been taken. Unfortunately, with so many islands scattered across the coastline, narrowing down the location seems almost impossible. Then another idea comes to him. Kevin returns to the Coast Guard office and suggests that the fisherman will probably visit the local fish market sooner or later to sell his catch. If they wait there, they might be able to identify him. Once again, the officer turns down the suggestion, explaining that the official search operation remains their highest priority. Kevin realizes that the authorities still aren't fully convinced by his account and aren't ready to follow his lead. Determined not to waste any more time, he quietly leaves the station. An officer notices him and tries to stop him, but Kevin manages to slip away and quickly catches a taxi to the marketplace. When he arrives, the market is surprisingly quiet. Only a handful of people are around. Kevin rushes from one person to another, describing the fisherman and asking if anyone has seen him. No one recognizes the description. Disappointed, Kevin starts walking away. Then he suddenly notices a man who looks remarkably similar to the fisherman. Without hesitation, Kevin runs after the man's vehicle. But when he finally catches up, he realizes it isn't the same person. Even so, Kevin explains that someone with a similar appearance took his wife and son. Although the man isn't able to help directly, he points Kevin toward another location where local fishermen often gather. Kevin immediately heads there, feeling a renewed sense of hope. He begins asking everyone he meets, hoping someone will recognize the description. Unfortunately, no one is able to provide any useful information. Just then, Kevin receives a phone call from the Coast Guard. The officer tells him to return immediately, warning that searching alone could put him in even greater danger. With no other leads left, Kevin has no choice but to head back. He gets into a taxi, clearly overwhelmed by everything that has happened. Noticing Kevin's distress, the taxi driver asks what is wrong. Kevin begins telling him the entire story, from getting stranded on the island to being separated from his wife and son. The driver is shocked. He never imagined that people from his own community could be involved in something like this. During the ride, Kevin notices a fresh wound on the driver's hand. It looks remarkably similar to an injury he had previously seen on the fisherman. Curious, Kevin asks how it happened. The driver calmly explains that certain fish can cause injuries like that while being handled. He also mentions that he recently received treatment for it at a local hospital. That small detail gives Kevin a brand new lead. He immediately heads to the hospital. While receiving treatment for his own injuries, he tells one of the doctors everything that has happened and explains that his wife and young son are still stranded on an island, struggling to survive. At first, the doctor refuses to share any patient information because of hospital privacy rules. However, when Kevin shows photos of his family on his phone and explains the situation, the doctor is deeply moved. Wanting to help within her limits, she allows Kevin to review recent patient records. The files don't include photographs, but Kevin carefully narrows the list by comparing ages, heights, and physical descriptions. Eventually, one name stands out. Believing he has finally found an important clue, Kevin immediately heads to the listed address. The taxi driver decides to help and goes with him. A short time later, they arrive at the house. Kevin rushes to the front door, where he is greeted by a woman inside. He asks about the man he's looking for, but she denies knowing anything. Still searching for answers, Kevin carefully looks around the house. That's when he notices a photograph hanging on the wall. It shows the fisherman standing proudly beside his boat, and the boat's registration number is clearly visible. Kevin quickly takes a picture of it with his phone, realizing it could become valuable evidence. Just then, the fisherman arrives home. The two men immediately recognize each other. The fisherman pretends they have never met, but Kevin confronts him and demands to know where his wife and son are. The fisherman refuses to answer. The confrontation quickly escalates, and Kevin manages to restrain him while continuing to demand answers. Hearing the commotion, the fisherman's wife rushes into the room holding a crossbow and orders Kevin to step back. Realizing how dangerous the situation has become, Kevin freezes. In the confusion that follows, an arrow is accidentally released, resulting in a tragic accident that injures a member of the fisherman's own family. The fisherman completely loses control and charges toward Kevin. Forced to defend himself, Kevin struggles with the fisherman, and the confrontation ends in tragedy. Moments later, Kevin notices another young daughter inside the house who appears to be seriously ill. He suddenly realizes that the fisherman may have been driven by desperation over his family's circumstances, although it cannot justify everything that happened. But by now, it is far too late to change the outcome. Kevin is already badly injured, and before he can leave the house, he collapses from exhaustion. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself lying in a hospital bed. His hands are restrained, and a police officer is standing nearby, keeping watch as the investigation begins. Soon, an investigating officer arrives and accuses Kevin of staging his family's disappearance to collect insurance money. According to the officer, Kevin later tracked down the fisherman, only to silence the only witness who could expose his plan. Kevin is completely shocked by these accusations. Things get even worse when he learns that the search operation for his wife and son has already been suspended. He realizes that every passing minute is putting his family in greater danger. Desperately, he begs the officers to believe him and continue the search, but no one is willing to listen. By now, Kevin is no longer being treated as a victim. In the eyes of the authorities, he has become the prime suspect. At that moment, an American law enforcement officer tries to calm him down. He tells Kevin not to make any reckless decisions and assures him that another solution will be found. He promises that the investigation will continue and asks Kevin to stay patient, but Kevin has completely lost faith in everyone around him. He believes that waiting any longer could cost his family their lives. Frustrated and overwhelmed, he raises his voice, insisting that every second matters. As the officers begin escorting him to another room, Kevin notices an opportunity. He quickly takes control of an officer's firearm, forces them to unlock his handcuffs, and escapes before anyone can react. The officers immediately begin chasing him. Kevin runs through the streets, narrowly avoiding capture several times. A little later, another officer spots him, points a firearm in his direction, and orders him to stop. Kevin doesn't slow down for a moment and keeps moving forward. By now, however, some of the officers have started questioning whether Kevin's story might actually be true. After running for hours, the first light of morning begins to appear. Kevin is exhausted, hungry, and still suffering from his injuries, but he refuses to give up. Realizing that he stands out in his current condition, he finds a place to change into different clothes, puts on a cap, and quietly blends into the crowd before continuing his search. The only clue Kevin has is the registration number of the fisherman's boat. Unfortunately, checking the available records doesn't lead anywhere. Although the staff provides a few details, none of them are specific enough to point him toward his family. Disappointed, Kevin walks outside. As he leaves the embassy, he notices a man nearby talking on his phone. That simple moment suddenly reminds him of something important. Kevin quickly contacts the embassy and explains that after leaving the bank, the fisherman had called a man named George. He suggests that if investigators examine those phone records, they may be able to trace George. The embassy agrees that it's a valuable lead and promises to begin looking into it. Meanwhile, the police continue searching the city for Kevin, but he manages to stay out of sight. A short time later, Kevin calls the investigating officer himself and once again suggests tracking George's phone. The officer tells him they've already tried contacting George, but his phone has been switched off. He asks Kevin to surrender peacefully and promises that the authorities will continue searching for his wife and son. Kevin, however, no longer believes those promises. After everything that has happened, he feels that trusting anyone would be a mistake. With nowhere else to turn, Kevin boards a bus leaving the city. Sitting quietly by the window, he begins to believe that he may have lost his family forever. Tears fill his eyes, but none of the passengers notice the pain he's carrying. Then, in a shocking twist, Kevin spots George sitting near the back of the bus. Without wasting a second, he calls out his name. George immediately panics, jumps off the moving bus as soon as it slows down, and starts running. Despite his injuries and complete exhaustion, Kevin chases after him with every bit of strength he has left. After a long chase, both men become too exhausted to keep running. George finally stops, and Kevin slowly walks toward him. Instead of threatening him, Kevin speaks with desperation in his voice. He begs George to tell him just one thing: the island where his wife and son are being held. Kevin promises that he isn't seeking revenge. He only wants to save his family before it's too late. George finally believes Kevin and slowly begins walking toward him. Just as it seems Kevin is about to get the answer he's been searching for, tragedy strikes. George is suddenly hit by a passing vehicle and collapses to the ground. Kevin rushes to his side and realizes that George is badly injured. Knowing there isn't much time, Kevin quickly unfolds a map and asks him to point to the island where his wife and son are being held. Before losing consciousness, George uses the last of his strength to point at one of the islands. Kevin immediately stands up, torn between two impossible choices. The nearest hospital is on the opposite side of the harbor. He doesn't know whether he should stay and help George or race to save his own family before it's too late. After a brief moment of hesitation, Kevin pleads with the driver involved in the accident to take George to the hospital while he sprints toward the harbor as fast as he can. After a long run, Kevin finally reaches the docks. He desperately asks a boat owner to rent him a boat, but he has already spent every dollar he had and can't afford the rental fee. The owner refuses to help. Running out of options, Kevin rushes to another part of the harbor and uses the firearm he had taken earlier to take control of a tourist boat. His first priority is filling the fuel tank, and within moments, he speeds toward the island where he believes his family is waiting. The tourists immediately report the incident, and police boats begin chasing Kevin across the water. Officers repeatedly order him to stop, but Kevin refuses to turn back. As the pursuit intensifies, warning shots are fired in an attempt to stop the boat. Kevin ducks for cover and does everything he can to avoid danger while keeping the boat under control. Although he still has the firearm with him, he refuses to use it against anyone. Instead, he throws it into the ocean, making it clear that his only goal is saving his family, not hurting anyone. Then Kevin notices that the boat has two engines. He starts the second engine, dramatically increasing his speed and finally pulling far enough ahead to escape the pursuing boats. Not long afterward, Kevin reaches the island where he believes his wife and son have been stranded. He pulls the boat onto the shore and immediately begins searching for them. He runs across the beach, calling their names again and again, but no one answers. For a terrifying moment, Kevin fears that he may have come to the wrong island. Refusing to give up, he keeps searching deeper inland. Then, at last, he finds them. His wife and son are lying there, barely conscious and in critical condition. Kevin rushes to his wife, gives her some water, and manages to wake her up. He immediately turns to his son and checks for signs of breathing. There aren't any. For a brief moment, panic takes over. But Kevin is a doctor, and he knows he can't give up. He immediately begins emergency resuscitation. After several tense moments that feel like an eternity, his son finally starts breathing again. Relieved, but knowing they are still far from safe, Kevin realizes they must leave the island immediately. He first carries his son back to the boat. Then he returns for his wife, determined to bring her to safety as well. But Kevin has reached his physical limit. He is severely injured, exhausted, and completely drained. As he struggles forward, his strength gives out, and he collapses to the ground. At that very moment, a bright red rescue helicopter appears in the sky. It is part of the response team that had been tracking the stolen boat. Kevin slowly opens his eyes and looks up at the helicopter hovering above him. In that moment, we realize that Kevin, his wife, and his son have finally been found. The story ends with a father who refused to give up, proving that determination, love, and the desire to protect one's family can give an ordinary person the strength to overcome impossible odds.